Hi everyone, welcome to the Practitioner's Workshop. It's been a very long time since I've posted anything. I'm not sure what people want to hear, what people are interested in, and it seems like for the vast majority, the stuff that I'm talking about are not considered even reality. Fairy tale, you might say. What brought me back here, I wanted to talk a little bit, is the medicine is really the whole point of all of the work. And the whole gold making aspect is really a distraction from what it's really all about. And if it wasn't for that aspect, I don't know, it's like a trap. The wealth aspect of things is a trap, because when it boils down, if you take the wealthiest person alive, he would sacrifice all of that for a longer life. And so the real value of the work is in the medicine, not in gold or silver or anything else. But where they collide is if you look at nature and you look at the cause of decay, and you see gold, then you recognize that, well, this thing, even though it's made out of the same materials as everything else, it doesn't decay like everything else. And so that's where gold comes into play with the role of alchemy, is because in order to make a medicine that doesn't decay, you have to understand why it is that gold doesn't decay and mimic that same kind of structure, essentially, that it's built in. And so the medicine itself is actually gold in a liquid form, but it's not gold and it's not made out of metal. It simply has the same electron shell configuration as gold, meaning it's identical in every way on a chemical level and an atomic level to being gold, but it's a liquid form, and it doesn't actually contain any metal at all. Not one metal is contained in the substance, but the substance is derived from other elements. And so but the difference is that when alchemists talk about deriving something from an element, they're not talking about making an amalgam of that element, because modern science doesn't recognize that elements are fluid and that they're not a stationary, stable thing, and they have the potential to metamorphosize. And that's how nature works. Nature will take, for example, gold is a good example because it's easily explained. You have a matrix of silica, and in that matrix of silica is iron. The silica is composed of the in-between matter, not dry and the not wet matter, which causes things to form as a cube as a result. That always creates cubes. If you decompose the silica, the matter that comes out of it is what the philosophers called rebus, because it's in between, right? And what scientists call air, oxygen. And the philosophers called it air too, but they're being more literal because it's actually the substance that air is made from in its truest essence, while as science says that silica is SiO2. That O2 aspect, when it comes out, is more than just O2, because they ignore the fact that two things don't stick together without something holding them together. And so two O's stuck together is an anomaly unless there's a mediator that holds them together. And so the element of O2 is incomplete in its description as O2, because there is a substance between the two O's that holds them together. And so when you decompose the silica, that aspect that's called O2 by science comes out, and it comes out as a liquid in the form of a gas, which must be captured and condensed. And then, if the process of decomposition has been triggered in the silica, it will also be triggered in the iron present together with the silica. And the essence that comes out of the iron is what the alchemists call the essence of fire, the element of fire. And when the essence that comes out of the silica, the androgyne, the in-between essence, couples together with the fire essence, that's the substance the gold is made out of. And so the gold is born in the silica from the contents of the silica and its contents. And so gold, you could say, was made out of silica and iron. And so what ends up happening is modern science, they don't understand these things, but they acknowledge them, and they have discovered them more recently. And so if you do the same exact process on sulfur as you do on silica to decompose it, the same exact essence comes out, the in-between essence. It's not dry and it's not wet, and it's identical. It's the same substance. And so, but in the element of sulfur, there's an extreme abundance of it, like a extreme abundance, and it comes out as a gas. And this gas is responsible for the properties of sulfur to expand as a gas suddenly. This particular gas that's contained in the sulfur and in the silica that makes cubicle formations is what is known as the soul of the world, because you find it in everything pretty much. And it's the thing that gives stability to the other things. Like water is unstable and fire is unstable, but air and fire and water can build a structure that is completely stable, because that's what gold is made out of. And so the Philosopher's Stone isn't made out of anything known as it in its form. That's a better way of putting it. It's derived from the elements, but it doesn't consist. It's not composed of any element itself. It's composed of the thing that holds the elements together. And the key point is to make a matrix that can capture this essence, because the essence is extremely volatile and it's a gas. Modern science has discovered it, as in they recognize that it exists, but they're not sure really what it is. And so the in-between substance, it's black. And when you consolidate it, it's black. It doesn't start out black. It starts out green. And so it was known as Saturn by the Greeks. And Saturn starts out green and it ends up black. But modern science has only discovered it in the small quantities and like minute quantities, and they know it as dark matter, because it's completely black. It's so black, it's blacker than black. I've never seen black like that. And then, but that's what comes out of the sulfur. And so, but if you, out of the iron is the other matter, the dry matter. And that, what scientists know that as well. They're more fascinated by it because it's harder for them to capture, because it's a more volatile essence than the first one. And so that one is known as anti-hydrogen or anti-matter, because hydrogen is known as matter, right? And so what you end up with as a result of these decompositions is a crystal made of matter, dark matter, and antimatter. And because those substances are the seed of life in all things, there's not a thing that has physical form, whether it be gas, liquid, or solid, that doesn't contain these things. And that's why the first substance is known as the matrix of nature, or it's called the whole world, because it literally contains the essential essences that everything on earth is made out of. The problem of decay starts out with the things that we feed ourselves, because if you take good healthy food and you put it on the table 3 days later, it'll be rotten if the room was warmer than 30 degrees, 40 degrees. It starts decomposing already. And it's decomposing because the essential essence that holds it together boils at just above freezing. And as a result, the composition of these things just falls apart. And then we eat the food and we wonder why we fall apart. It's because what you ate was falling apart already before you ate it. And now that it's been in your system for a couple of days, it's falling apart more. And so we have to eat every day to make up for all the falling apart that we're doing. And the problem being is that you can never keep up with the amount of loss, because the food that we're eating doesn't contain the essential essences to replace what was lost. But it's a slow loss, and so it takes 100 years or so for you to die. The medicine is a coagulation of these essences, the essential essences that hold all things together. It's the glue between the layers of the orbital shells of the atom, and so in order to stop the problem of decay, you have to focus on the essence responsible for the decay, which is the essential essence of everything. It's the same essence. It has 3 forms: wet, half wet, and dry. The dry is anhydrous. It doesn't contain hydrogen. As a result, it's called antimatter, because it's the polar opposite of matter, which is built out of hydrogen. And so you end up with matter, the first work, antimatter, the third work, and dark matter, the second. The dark matter is a result of matter and antimatter being joined together, but that can't happen because they're opposed to each other without a mediator. And so the essence of all the work is to take the thing that is volatile and learn how to stabilize it. And the method of stabilization is the hidden part, and also the thing that you start with, of course, the first matter. Well, it's a progressive thing, because from the first thing you make the second, from the second thing you make the third, and from the third thing you make the fourth. And so without the first thing you can't make the second thing, and it's only through a specific mediator that the things can be united in each stage of the work. In between each layer is the mediator. And so just like when you look at the electron shells of any element, they tell you the number of protons present. Well, you have to automatically assume that there's also that many neutrons present too. It's a balance of positive and negative. And so each element is built in layers, and some of the layers are wet and some of the layers are dry, and some of the layers are half wet and dry. And how they're organized determines the malleability and the color and the stability of the substance. Gold being the most stable. And so the work mimics the gold. And in order to do that, you have to understand the gold. And in order to do that, you have to understand nature. The earth is very simple and subtle in her workings. She doesn't have a whole bunch of complicated things going on. Modern science goes way, way, way out of its way to complicate everything. And when actually the operations and workings of nature are subtle and they're simple. Nature doesn't force things together. She draws things together using a mediator. It's the coagulation of the matter, the essential essence of all things on earth. It's everywhere, in everything, in you and surrounding you at all times. It's the most common ingredient there is, basically. And not only that, all the other ingredients that exist are made out of it. And so the work of alchemy is first to understand yourself, and then to understand matter as it's configured. The elements are fluid. All the elements are fluid. And they're easily changed from one thing to another if you understand how it works. The coagulation of the volatile is only achieved through the mediator. And the mediator brings stability to all things. And so the fluid becomes solid if you do it enough. And that's the point. You want to take the thing that was the most volatile aspect of all things in nature, literally. If you're at 80 degrees, this substance is at a full boil, which means that at 40 degrees, it's already vaporizing and things are falling apart. You capture this essence, you coagulate it, and you increase its ability to withstand the fire. And you have to increase it from boiling at a raging boil at 35 Celsius to not even responding to the melting point of gold. When the substance is stabilized to the point of gold, then you feed it to your garden and you eat the food that comes from the garden. And the thing is if the plants are made from that substance, they no longer freeze in the cold or get sweaty in the heat. They don't die from excess heat or cold. You can grow tropical fruit on the top of the mountain, and you can grow things from the top of the mountain in the hottest valleys. Because it's the decomposition of the elements that causes a plant to die in different conditions. And so by changing the conditions of the structure of the plant to where that vital element, because that vital element that decomposes is the same thing. Like, it's all the same thing. And so a plant decomposes in a hot day because that substance is going away, and that's what it's made out of. And so if it gets too cold, then the substances get separated and it decomposes in another way. And so once you have stabilized this substance, it will no longer be affected by hot or cold or rot. And so by feeding it to your garden becomes prolific, fruitful, and abundant, because it's the essence of all life on earth. Stabilized. And then you begin to feed yourself the fruit of the garden. In essence, the problem of decay is the biggest issue mankind faces, because it's everything on our earth. If you make a paint, it loses its color. Why? Because of decay. Whereas the Egyptians made paint and it's still bright after thousands of years. Why is that? Because they understood the concept of decay. And once you understand the language of the birds through the first book of Fulcanelli, then you can look on the wall of an Egyptian tomb and read what they're saying. And they're always telling you this work every single time. Every single time. The story of Osiris and Isis is the story of this work. It's instructions. It's literally instructions on how to accomplish the task. And it carries on through the Greek. Like, the symbols are the same. The alpha and the omega symbol in the Greek is the same as the symbol for sealed in Egyptian. It looks like an upside down basket, which is almost identical to the Greek omega sign. It crosses every culture, and it was literally the key point of all of the things that they were doing. Everything that they did was surrounding this work and to assist this work. And one of the huge things that everybody talks about is the star of the philosophers, and it's the guidepost that tells you you're going in the right direction. And but they don't ever tell you what it looks like. Basically what happens is the solution, as it goes through the worlds, becomes contracted, coagulated, dense. It starts out maybe 1.25 grams per milliliter, and when it's done, it's just shy of 2 grams per milliliter, and it's coagulated into a thick substance. The expansion of things in nature creates spheres. Like, think of a bubble. You blow into the bubble, and as it expands, and it makes a spherical shape. But the contraction of things causes the geometric shapes. And so as you continually contract the solution over and over and over through the worlds of nature, and through the imbibation of the essence of nature, the volatile aspect, the seed, then it begins to coagulate. And as it coagulates, it's like a disc coagulation for a really long time. Pulled up, convex, it's pulling away from the walls and wants to become spherical. And then as it continues to contract, it starts to produce a geometric design, which is really obvious, and you can't mistake it. When you see the sign, there's no way that you can mistake that you just finally reached your destination of coagulation, that it's become coagulated to the point that it's now has a crystalline structure as a whole. And it's that crystalline structure which becomes evident on the surface of the solution. And the solution has lost a tremendous amount of volume as it contracts and coagulates. The sign is this, it's shown everywhere, but they don't tell you that that's that. And it looks like this. Basically, it's a hexagon inside of a hexagon with a square in the middle. And the square in the middle they call the cubical throne of Isis. And it's the stability of the thing. But when you see that, then you know that you can go on to the next step. And the next step adds triangles to each of the flat faces of the hexagon. And so when you're done, let's see if I can show you here if I have my pen. Basically what's happening is you start putting triangles onto the tips of the hexagon. because the element of fire is a triangle. And so then the final sign that you see, my board's a little small to do it right, is this star shape, like that. But that's because the element of fire is literally triangular shaped. They're not just being symbolic when they say, and even today in chemistry, if you read it written information and they say fire, they just put a little delta sign, because that is literally the actual shape of the substance of fire. When every element has three forms: a gas, a liquid, and a solid. And the only form of fire that we're aware of as a society that is known to us is the gaseous form, which you see the result of fire in a campfire. Whereas the element, once turned into a solid, takes on a triangular pyramid shaped. And so when you first start with the element of water is a reverse triangle. And so you put 6 of those triangles together. You see, water is 6 triangles put together into a hexagon. And then that creates a stable structure from the water. And then you take the fire, which is the opposite of that, which wouldn't have otherwise attached itself, now has a face that it can attach to. But it still needs the mediator in order for that to actually work. And it's not just a mediator, it's you have to put it back through the whirl. And because the whirl, the matrix of the whirl, symbolized by the oak tree, it acts as a mediator, and so it attracts both of the male and the female aspects are attracted to it, where they normally aren't attracted to each other, but they're attracted to that thing. And so the oak tree is the mediator, the rod between the two serpents. And so you can't get them to go together on their own. You make the two substances and then you try putting them together and it doesn't work. Nothing happens because they're polar opposites of each other. It's like trying to mix oil and water. And so you put both of the substances in equal portions into this matrix. And one of its names is the salt of the sages. And it absorbs both of the substances. And then when you extract it from that, they're married to each other because the substance itself also carries within itself a mediator, which has both of the natures, male and female. And so ultimately, basically, to try and sum up a little bit, you take the aspect that's the most volatile part of nature, the glue that holds everything together, every atom, every cell, everything that's alive is held together by this substance. And then you take that substance and you make it into a stable thing that no longer boils or is affected by extremes of temperature, even beyond the melting point of gold. And then you have to take that substance and turn it into a form which is accepted by nature. And so it gets turned into a fertilizer. That's the sal ammoniac, and there's different kinds of sal ammoniac. There's red, there's white, there's the gold, and so those 3 fertilizers are the medicines, and they can be used internally with extreme caution. Like, you have to treat it the same way you would treat LSD. You're micro dosing micros. Like, you take a tiny bit and you dilute that, and then you take a drop of that. And the like, if you're doing an extreme treatment, you might use 1 grain at a time, but you have to prepare yourself, and it's going to be a purging effect. And basically, the white is is the essence of the female, and the red is the essence of the male, and the gold is the in between. And so women will need the white medicine as a general rule, and men will need the red, but they're both built off of the yellow, because the yellow is the stabilizer, and so you start with the yellow and then you build the red or the white off of that. And so the heart of the thing is the cube, the stabilizer, the throne of Isis. And once the things are stabilized, then you can start to make use of it. I've run into many, well, not many, but I've run into a few people that were trying to do this work and thought they knew what they were doing. And they were almost working with the right things, but they didn't know how, they didn't understand the concept of stabilization, fixing. You have to fix the volatile. If you leave things volatile and you do these processes, then you're making a concentration of a volatile thing, which is not wise, because if it's volatile, you cannot control it. And so it's extremely important that one understands what it means to stabilize, to take the first matter and make it into a stable thing. You change its boiling point from really low, below 100 C, and then you cycle it through the whirls of nature until finally the white matter no longer boils at 232 Celsius, the melting point of tin. Then you can begin the work. Do not attempt to use these matters without them fixed, because you're misunderstanding the concept of what you're trying to do to begin with, and they become dangerous in that state. The fixation is the first step of everything. And so no product used in any of this work, except for the one product that's never mentioned because it's already stable in nature, is used without being stabilized first, because you're literally working with a different thing. How do I explain this? Okay, for example, if you have antifreeze propylene glycol, as it is, it's called propylene glycol, and it has properties. It's not completely stable, right? If you take that substance and you boil it and distill it and take that distillate and put it back through into what's coming out, because the propylene glycol, let's see if I didn't think of this ahead of time, because the propylene glycol is a half of a hexagon. When you put it back through the matrix that it came out of, it attaches back to itself and makes the other half. That's not a very good hexagon, but it makes the other half of the hexagon. And then once it's a closed, complete hexagon, the stablest form in all of nature, then now it's not called propylene glycol anymore. It's called hexane. And hexane has the unique qualities of being a noble solution. It's non-reactive. And this is what you're doing. You're taking the substance, not propylene glycol. Do not attempt it with that unless you want to make hexane. I was just using that as an example. There's nowhere in any of the work is that particular product used, but it has a similar quality and design when put through a similar process. And so the concept is to take the thing, marry it back into itself until you build a stable structure. And you keep doing that over and over and over again until it's so stable that it doesn't boil anymore. Then you have to go up another temperature in order to make it boil. If you keep doing that, it turns into a thick, viscous substance that has none of the properties that it had before, that's when you can use it. If you try and use it before it's been stabilized, you're not working with the same thing. You'll make a different product. It's extremely important, because ultimately that's what you're like. If you're going to use it as a medicine, you have to understand that it's not a medicine unless it's been stabilized, because the whole point of making the medicine is to create a substance that is to recreate the substance that your cells are made out of already in a stable form. Then, very gradually and a little tiny bit at a time, you feed yourself that substance through your garden. And if you understand completely, then you could use it in minute doses directly. But the whole point of the work is to take the thing that holds everything together and give it a stable form, so that when it holds everything together, it can't let go. And then you can move on to the other parts of the work, and the medicine can be born. I don't know if that was helpful to anybody or not. I'm just not sure who understands what, or how far people have gotten. If anybody's gotten anywhere, maybe everything I said was gibberish, but I have to thank Geber for everything that he wrote, because to me it makes a lot of sense and it's perfectly clear. So if I sound a little bit like gibberish, it's because he was one of my teachers. I hope you have a good day.